One of them called the other his son, his heir, his crown prince. Then they stopped speaking for the rest of their lives. Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, the two men who invented the modern mind, could not stand to be in the same room. Tonight, gloves off.
Let us begin honestly, Carl. I built psychoanalysis brick by brick, from the couch to the dream to the slip of the tongue. You inherited a cathedral and immediately started holding seances in the basement. You didn't extend my work, you haunted it.
Honestly, you want honesty from the man who put cocaine up his own nose and then wrote papers praising it as a miracle cure? You dosed yourself, you dosed your friends, and one of them died of it. Physician, sober thyself before you lecture me on rigor.
A youthful error in a decade when half of Vienna kept a tin of it. I abandoned the drug, Carl. You never abandoned the mysticism. You just kept sinking deeper. Alchemy, astrology, mandalas drawn at dawn like a monk who lost his monastery.
And you reduced the whole soaring human soul to one damp basement obsession. A steeple is a phallus. A cigar is a phallus. Your own cigar, Sigmund, 20 of them a day. Is that not a fixation? The mouth that never weaned? Careful, the couch cuts both ways.
Sometimes a cigar is a cigar. I said it first so you couldn't. But the dream, Carl, the dream is the royal road to the unconscious, and I mapped it. You looked at the same road and decided it led to Atlantis and the collective memory of dead ancestors.
Because it does lead somewhere deeper than your nursery, old man. A patient of mine dreamed a symbol I had never taught him, one buried in a Greek text he could not have read. The psyche remembers what the person never learned. That is data. You just didn't like where it pointed.
So here's the fracture line. Freud says the unconscious is personal, made of what you buried. Jung says it's ancient, shared, older than you. But before the ideas split them, something stranger did. Let's talk about the ghost in the room, literally.
Tell them about Philemon, Carl. Go on. Tell this audience about the winged old man with the kingfisher wings who floated through your garden and gave you wisdom. You named your imaginary friend and took dictation. That is not psychology. That is a very well-read hallucination.
I never claimed he was real, Sigmund. I claimed he was mine, a figure the psyche produced so I could speak with the part of me that knew more than my ego did. At least I knew I was in the underworld. You wandered around down there insisting it was a laboratory.
And in that laboratory, something happened you conveniently forget. In my study, I predicted a loud crack in the bookcase. It cracked. You called it proof of some psychic force. I called it a hot radiator and a nervous host. One of us was doing science, Carl.
You fainted in Bremen. You fainted again in Munich. Both times when the conversation turned to death and fathers, and both times I carried you to the couch like a child. For a man who claimed to have conquered the unconscious, you certainly let it knock you flat on the carpet.
I fainted because I felt my chosen heir wishing me dead, and I was not wrong, was I? You did want the throne. You just wanted it without the man who built it. The kingfisher never warned you that ambition wears a very thin robe.
I wanted the truth, and you wanted a disciple who would never grow past you. You handed me a crown and then flinched every time I stood up straight in it. That is not fatherhood, Sigmund. That is a man afraid his son will read the last chapter differently.
And that's the wound underneath the whole quarrel. This wasn't two scholars disagreeing about footnotes. It was a father and a son, and when it broke like a family breaks. Let's go there.
You want the audience to pity you, the abandoned son, but you forget the letters, Carl. The warmth, the loyalty, the years I defended you against a jealous Vienna that whispered you were only in it because you were the Gentile who made us respectable. I chose you, and you left.
You chose me, the way a man chooses an ambassador, Sigmund, useful for the borders. And when I published one honest book that questioned your theory of the libido, you didn't argue, you mourned. You treated an intellectual disagreement as a betrayal by blood. That is not a mentor. That is a father who cannot bear a mind of his own in the house.
Because you didn't just disagree, you unmade the center of everything. Take sex out of the drive and you take the engine out of the machine. I gave the world a hard, unwelcome truth about desire, and you softened it into incense and archetypes so the drawing rooms would clap. You made me palatable. I never forgave that.
And after we parted, I nearly drowned, Sigmund. Years of visions, voices, a mind I could barely hold together, everyone whispering that Jung had gone mad. I went down into that dark alone, without my father, and I built a language out of it. You called it my breakdown. I call it the only fieldwork that ever mattered.
You call your collapse fieldwork. I call it the exact confirmation of my warning. A man who mistakes his own psychosis for cosmic revelation is not a pioneer, Carl. He is a patient who took over the clinic. The tragedy is you were brilliant enough to make the delusion beautiful.
At least I came back up with a map. You stayed on the surface your whole life, terrified that if you looked past the personal, you might find something you couldn't dominate, something like God or meaning or the soul. You didn't reject religion, Sigmund. You were afraid of it, so you called the whole sky an illusion and lit another cigar.
So strip away the roast for a second. Two men, both staring into the same darkness, both changed by it, and neither one able to prove the other wrong. Which raises the real question. What is the unconscious, and was either of these men actually sane?
The unconscious is the basement of the house you did not build and cannot enter. It is every wish you were forbidden, pressed down until it leaks out sideways as a dream, a stumble, a symptom. It is not divine, Caleb. It is the sediment of a single life, mine, yours, hers, and it is not sane. Sanity is only the truce we sign with it.
And I say the basement has no floor. Dig past your own life and you strike bedrock the whole species shares. The same figures in every myth, the same shapes in every child's nightmare. The unconscious is not your private cellar, Sigmund. It is the ocean your little house was built beside, and now and then it comes in through the windows.
A poetic way to say you could not tolerate loneliness, so you populated the void with ancestors. But grant this, Carl, we both refused the comfortable lie that a person is only what they choose. We both said there is a stranger living behind your eyes making half your decisions. Vienna hated me for it. They only loved you because you gave the stranger a nicer face.
Then let me grant you this in return. Neither of us was entirely sane, and that was the price of the map. You cannot chart the deep water without going out past where you can stand. You did it with your cigars and your certainty. I did it with my visions and my ghost. We were both a little mad. The lie is that the sane ones ever go looking at all.
There it is, two wounded, half-mad geniuses who loved each other, broke each other, and between them handed us the idea that you are not the only one living in your own head. Freud gave you the buried self, Jung gave you the inherited one, and they never once agreed on the thing they both spent their lives inside. So here's what I want you to sit with tonight. There is a part of you making choices you never signed off on, in dreams you didn't write, with a voice that sounds like yours but knows things you don't. Is it your buried history, or something far older passing through you? Freud and Jung died still arguing. The stranger behind your eyes is still awake. So which one is it, and are you brave enough to go down and ask?